Mick Fleetwood, now 78, has finally decided to open up about the truth behind Fleetwood Mac. The affairs, the betrayals, and the chaos that nearly destroyed the band. For decades, he kept their darkest secrets hidden. But in March 2025, something unexpected happened. Mick and Lindsey Buckingham were spotted back in the studio together. What they talked about wasn't just music. It was about everything that tore the band apart, and why Stevie Nicks might never forgive him. Mick Fleetwood was born on June 24, 1947, in Redruth, Cornwall, England. His father was a Royal Air Force wing commander, so the family moved often. His childhood was full of travel, strict discipline, and change. Only 2 years after World War II, Britain was still recovering, and the Fleetwood family was constantly being transferred. When Mick was 4, they moved to Egypt, where he lived through major historical moments like the Egyptian Revolution in 1952 and the Suez Crisis in 1956. Living in Egypt left a deep mark on him. Surrounded by the rhythms of Middle Eastern music, he unconsciously absorbed its complex beats and textures. Long before he became a drummer, he was already internalizing sound and rhythm in a way that would later make his drumming unique. After Egypt, his family relocated to Norway, where his father worked with NATO. Mick was about 10 years old and quickly learned to speak Norwegian. Although he eventually forgot the language, living in a cold, quiet place like Norway shaped how he saw the world. The long, dark winters taught him about mood, atmosphere, and patience, qualities that later influenced his music. School, however, was not easy for Mick. He had severe dyslexia, and traditional learning methods didn't work for him. Teachers often misunderstood him, thinking he wasn't trying hard enough. He knew the answers but couldn't memorize or write in the way schools demanded. The frustration built up until one day, he broke down crying under a tree, praying for a way out. His escape came when he was 13. His parents gave him a small drum set made by Gigster, and it completely changed his life. He began teaching himself to play by ear, practicing for hours in the attic to songs by the Everly Brothers and Cliff Richard. With no formal lessons, he developed a raw, natural style that would later become his signature. Drumming became his therapy, his way to express himself and find peace. Creativity ran in his family. His father wrote poetry and occasionally played drums, while his sisters Susan and Sally went into acting and sculpture. Mick shared that same creative drive. When he was 12, he even built a pretend nightclub in a barn behind their house, called Club Keller. He made a stage, set up lights, and imagined a crowd dancing to his music. Decades later, when he opened his real restaurant and music venue, Fleetwood's on Front Street in Maui, he realized that dream had started in that little barn. At 15, Mick dropped out of school. He was failing academically, but thriving creatively. His parents supported his decision, understanding that his future was in music, not books. They bought him a better drum set, and Mick moved to London to chase his dream. With no car, he bought a used taxi, which became both his transportation and band van. Musicians started hiring him not just because of his drumming skills but because he could bring his own gear and get to gigs easily, a rare advantage at the time. He stayed on the floor of his sister Sally's place in Notting Hill and quickly became part of London's vibrant music scene. His big break came when a local musician named Peter Bardens, who lived nearby, asked him to join his band, the Shanes, in 1963. Mick was just 16. Within a year, they were opening for the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds, and they even appeared in a short film called Mards and Rockers in 1965, where a young Mick can be seen drumming. In 1966, Mick joined another band called the Bow Street Runners, who had already won a major TV contest called Ready Steady Win, a show that aimed to discover the next Beatles. Their debut single had sold over 20,000 copies, and the group was on the rise. But when a strike at the record pressing plant delayed their next release, the momentum faded. Even so, for Mick, it was another valuable step forward. Then came the turning point in April 1967. Mick was invited to audition for John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers, one of the most respected blues bands in Britain. It was a massive opportunity, and though he was nervous, he got the job. There he met bassist John McVie, a friendship that would change both their lives. Mick's time with Mayall was like attending a blues university. He learned from legends like John Lee Hooker and Muddy Waters and began to understand rhythm, soul, and storytelling in music. But his drinking eventually got out of hand, and he was fired for showing up drunk to gigs. That setback, however, became the spark for something much bigger. In April 1967, John Mayall gifted guitarist Peter Green some free studio time. Green invited Mick Fleetwood and John McVie to record 5 songs with him. One of those songs was an instrumental track titled Fleetwood Mac, a name Green came up with almost casually. But that simple title became the seed of music history. A few months later, Peter Green formed a new band and decided to call it Fleetwood Mac, hoping McVie would join him permanently. At first, McVie refused. He wanted the security of a steady job with Mayall. So Green hired another bassist temporarily. But just a few weeks later, McVie changed his mind and joined for good. Fleetwood Mac made their live debut on August 13, 1967, at the National Jazz and Blues Festival under the name Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac featuring Jeremy Spencer. Their self-titled debut album came out in February 1968 and became a surprise hit. Even without a single radio hit, it reached number 4 on the UK charts and stayed there for 37 weeks, selling over 1 million copies purely through word of mouth and their electrifying live performances. The album was a mix of blues covers and original songs like Long Grey Mare and Shake Your Moneymaker. While it became a big hit in the UK, reaching number 4 on the charts and staying there for 37 weeks, it didn't do well in the US, where it only reached number 198 on the Billboard chart. The band began recording in September 1967 with Bob Brunning on bass, but by November, John McVie had officially joined and helped finish the album. Its success showed that true talent could shine even without big advertising or radio promotion. People simply loved their sound. By the end of 1968, 2 new members completely changed the direction of the band. First was 18-year-old Danny Cohen, a gifted guitarist who impressed Peter Green so much that Green invited him to join Fleetwood Mac after hearing him play with his band Boiler House. Then came Christine Perfect, a talented keyboard player and singer from the band Chicken Shack. She had recently been named Best Female Vocalist by Melody Maker readers and played as a guest musician on Fleetwood Mac's second album. Later that year, the band released Albatross, which became their first number 1 hit across Europe. Peter Green later said the song would never have worked without Danny Cohen's contribution. In August 1968, they recorded their second album, Mr. Wonderful. It was made live in the studio with real amplifiers and a PA system, giving it a raw, energetic feel. Christine Perfect added keyboards even though she wasn't yet an official member. The album marked a shift in their music, moving away from strict blues into something more experimental. The Beatles even took notice and considered signing Fleetwood Mac to their Apple label, but their manager declined. Instead, the band joined Warner Brothers through Reprise Records, a partnership that would last for decades. However, label issues soon followed. After leaving Blue Horizon, they briefly signed with Immediate Records, but the company's financial problems forced them to find another home. Then came another big change in 1969. Their album Then Play On moved away from blues into psychedelic rock, blending emotional guitar work and rich soundscapes. The shift worked. The album reached number 4 in the UK, with its single Oh Well hitting number 2. The band even traveled to Chicago to record with blues legends like Willie Dixon, Buddy Guy, and Otis Spann, blending American blues with their new experimental style. Songs like Rattlesnake Shake showed that Fleetwood Mac was evolving into something much bigger than anyone expected. But their growing success was soon followed by chaos. In March 1970, Peter Green attended a party in Munich while the band was touring Europe. It was rumored to be hosted by a cult, and Green took LSD that was much stronger than anything he had ever tried before. Some believed his drink was spiked. When he returned, he was completely different. He started talking about money as if it were evil and wanted to give away all of the band's earnings. Within 2 months, he left Fleetwood Mac. He was later diagnosed with schizophrenia and underwent electroconvulsive therapy. His departure was heartbreaking, especially since the band had just begun to find worldwide success. Just before their US tour in August 1970, Christine McVie officially joined the band. She had retired from music after leaving Chicken Shack to focus on her marriage to John McVie, but she had already played as a session musician on several Fleetwood Mac albums. On Kiln House, she contributed vocals, keyboards, and even drew the album's cover art. Her joining marked a new beginning. Her warmth and melodic songwriting helped fill the hole Peter Green had left, both musically and emotionally. But the chaos didn't stop there. In February 1971, Jeremy Spencer disappeared in Los Angeles. He told the band he was going to a bookstore but never came back. Days later, the FBI found him with a religious cult called the Children of God. When they saw him again, his head was shaved and he was a completely different person. He left the band for good. To replace him, Fleetwood Mac brought in Bob Welch, a talented guitarist and songwriter who would help shape their sound for the next few years. In September 1971, they released Future Games, their fifth album. It marked a complete transformation. The blues was gone, replaced by soft rock and layered harmonies. The album didn't chart in the UK but gained fans in America, showing that the band was ready to grow in a new direction. In 1972, they released Bare Trees, featuring Bob Welch's Sentimental Lady and Christine McVie's Spare Me a Little of Your Love. The songs became favorites at their concerts, and the album eventually went gold. Despite the success, internal struggles continued. Danny Kirwan, who had joined as a teenager, began to crumble under pressure. By 1972, he was drinking heavily and isolating himself. Before one show, he destroyed his guitar and refused to perform. The band decided to fire him, a sad but necessary choice. His departure marked the end of Fleetwood Mac's original lineup. 2 years later, even more turmoil hit when guitarist Bob Weston had an affair with Mick Fleetwood's wife, Jenny Boyd. The betrayal devastated Mick, who was already struggling with addiction and exhaustion. Still, the band released Heroes Are Hard to Find in 1974, reaching number 34 on the Billboard chart, their best yet. But tensions during the tour caused Bob Welch to quit after clashing with John McVie on stage. The band was falling apart. Everything changed in 1975. Fleetwood Mac released a self-titled album that would quietly become one of the biggest records of all time. It took 58 weeks, more than a year, to reach number 1 on the Billboard 200. When it finally did, on September 4, 1976, it sold over 9 million copies in the US alone and millions more worldwide. The UK barely noticed it at first, but this album laid the foundation for their greatest success. But even as fame grew, the band's personal lives collapsed. When they began recording Rumours in 1976, cocaine use was rampant, relationships were ending, and emotions were high. Mick Fleetwood discovered his wife was having an affair with a close friend. Christine and John McVie were getting divorced. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham had broken up but still had to work together, fighting constantly in the studio. Mick and Stevie even began an affair of their own, while Christine started dating the band's lighting director. Despite the chaos, they kept recording. The music became their therapy. Go your own way was Lindsey's message to Stevie. Don't stop was Christine's way of looking forward. On the surface, the band seemed broken, but their pain created one of the most powerful albums in history. A masterpiece born from heartbreak, betrayal, and raw emotion. When Fleetwood Mac released Rumours in early 1977, no one could have predicted how massive it would become. The album exploded, selling more than 10 million copies in its first month and eventually topping 40 million sales worldwide. It dominated the Billboard 200 for 31 non-consecutive weeks, making it one of the biggest albums in music history. 4 songs reached the top 10, including Dreams, which became the band's only number 1 single. The chain was especially meaningful, as it was the only song credited to all 5 members. In 1978, Rumours won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year, solidifying Fleetwood Mac as one of the most powerful bands in the world. Their next project, Tusk, released in 1979, was bold, experimental, and incredibly expensive. It cost $1.4 million to produce, more than $6 million today, because the band built their own studio just to make it. Mick Fleetwood defended the cost, saying it was their own money and that creating freely was a privilege they had earned. The album showed their creative extremes. Fleetwood's tribal-style drumming drove the title track, and Lindsey Buckingham recorded some parts in bizarre ways, even using a Kleenex box as a snare drum and singing while doing push-ups with microphones taped to the floor. Their engineer, Ken Calais, later called Buckingham a maniac for his wild recording methods. Tusk was artistic and brave, but it never reached the commercial heights of Rumours. The album's failure to match expectations left the band emotionally and physically drained. By 1982, Fleetwood Mac needed a comeback, and Mirage gave them one. Released on July 2nd, it returned to their softer rock sound and quickly went to number 1. Hold Me stayed at number 4 on the charts for 7 weeks, Gypsy reached number 12, and Love in Store hit number 22. Despite the success, the band was more fractured than ever. Their Mirage tour covered only 29 cities, far fewer than the 100-plus shows they had done for Tusk.